Now, the rest of the story.
Well, we're down to the second last field of beans. Had a little bit more rain here lately than we thought we would. It is pretty late in the day. It's like, we're going on 4 o'clock. So it seems kind of, well, they do snap. So what I'm doing, it's kind of a low-key, poor man's way of doing this, is you bite the soybean to see if it pops or not when you bite it. Now if it tastes like, not taste because it tastes like a soybean, if it squishes like a marshmallow, it's too wet. Neither of those were like marshmallows, but they didn't exactly pop either. Now here's the problem. It's not a guaranteed way of knowing what the moisture actually is. And the stalks, well, they're not tough. That was my big concern. We had more rain than we really were supposed to get. And the ground, it's certainly not dry, but I mean, like, we're right there. So I guess what I'm gonna do is go get the combine fired up and make a pass. And worst comes to worst, I can't cut. Best case scenario, we can at least fill the semi for morning. Let's see how it goes. Well, we're bouncing between GoPro and cell phone, but I'm hoping I'm not setting myself up to fail, which I'm managing my expectations. We went through, we got a new radio in the combine. The old one was all sorts of messed up. We already weather band. We already went through the other day. We've been shut down from running for what is today? A couple days. So right out there is the first of my beans that need to be harvested, and I don't have very many. I mean, less than 100, and that's way too many. Man, I love this machine. You turn the key and she just cranks. So what I need to do is get out of the buildings here and over to where I can hook up to the bean head. Hey everyone, so this part of the video of me just talking here is just today. I just got back from harvesting this farm. So this farm is harvested, we're done. All I have left is 13 acres and I'm hoping to have that done tomorrow. Now everything at this farm I think actually fared better with the rain that we had, the shutdown for a couple days. We went from harvesting, two dry beans at the farm before this, and then this farm I made 2 passes at 15%, which is way too wet, but I think it pretty well evened out with the stuff that was 12.5, because every load that came back so far, every settlement sheet, it was like 12.8, which was 13 and under is well within reason. So going through and hooking up the combine is really straightforward. A lot easier than the 9510. You just had the single point hookup, and even hooking up, lining up to the heads, I think is a little bit simpler with this machine versus the 9510. Harvest in particular just goes a lot smoother. The combine just burns right through the crops. The soybeans in particular. We haven't harvested any corn yet, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of heads up about, I'm going to be talking as I just started harvesting this farm, or just started, but yeah, I filmed this particular video yesterday. And I'm looking forward to be done with beans. The head is working great. The combine is working awesome. It's just, even as far as corn goes, I'm having people asking about what corn is going to be doing. And I've checked 3 different samples across 3 separate farms, 3 separate hybrids, and I've gotten everything from 27.7 to 23.3, and then the lowest was 22.2. And Once again, that is checking it, hand shelling it out, and then running it through our moisture tester. You usually do gain 2% moisture when you run it through the combine. I don't know. I think the theory we had is that the machine kind of, I don't know if you want to say it squeezes the moisture out of the kernel, but it exposes maybe a little bit more. It works the surface just a little bit, that exposes a little bit more of the moisture that's inside that kernel. But this soybean head, I know we should go to a draper. Nobody's really bugging me about that. But this head, my biggest issue with it, outside of the electrical issue we had, is the head loss directly in front of the feeder house. I've adjusted, slowed down, sped up, done everything I possibly could. I think it's just the nature of the beast, and unfortunately it's just one of those things you have to accept when you're harvesting your crops. This farm, I don't know if it was the machine, I don't know if it was the year. I mean, the beans did stand really good, no, don't get me wrong, but this farm actually did yield pretty well, all things considered, compared to what I expect from it in the past. So I'm gonna get back to talking
back to
my
the rest
regular
of the
video.
video.
I'll talk to you guys later.
So that's what this video, the rest of this is going to be, is you guys can watch me attempt to fail. And that may or may have not have been me opening up an ice cold Mountain Dewiness drink. So what we're really looking at here is, let's look at the bright side. If this is a fall flat in your face, the stuff is too rough, tough, not rough, I'm sorry, then they're calling for sunshine tomorrow, and I almost certainly should be able to run tomorrow. So the last 45 minutes to an hour, not quite an hour, I've spent running around getting everything set up here and making sure everything's ready to run. I won't have to do that in the morning, but all depends on if we get an overnight dew or what the weather wants to throw at us. I mean, we are currently as far away from home as we typically get, and I don't want to have to go all the way back home just to start combining corn, which we'll probably be doing this week. But here's the downside to that. We just checked the corn that we would like to harvest, and that's still sitting at 22%. But it's the stuff right at home, and it I guess we're just gonna get right into it. It'll take a little bit more drying at 22% versus like sub 20, obviously. But I talked to the elevator today on the beans, and they are taking beans all weekend. So we should be able to get them done as long as we can get them through the machine. And I did bring the handheld moisture tester with us. We're gonna have to go through, we'll do a hand check too and make sure these are at least under 14. Ideally, I'd rather they be like right at 13, less head shell, and combine's not growling. That's good, right? Well, this is the average, 13, after taking 3 separate tests, and I'd say that's good enough to run. I'm gonna head back across the rest of this strip and see what we can do, and I'll have to get a hold of Ryan and tell him to get on up here. Well, we're winding down for the night. I've been running for about 2 hours. Haven't found any wet soybeans. I just did the lowest yielding stuff at 55 bushel to the acre. And I'm not really worried about the stuff getting tough, but the real goal was to at least get the semi full. We'll have a little bit on the cart, but I'm not going to get carried away filling the cart full. It sounds like I'm going to have a little bit of time before Ryan gets back to run. Not going to be doing any major servicing to the combine, even pulling the filters. I don't think it's really going to be worth it tonight because I've only ran a little bit I have, and it hasn't been super dusty. It's been dusty, but not like dust cloud hovering over top of you as you're going across the field dusty. And we got just enough of a breeze that I've been staying upwind of it. And I've been working on the tedious cutting. The lowest strip that I just got done with, there's a few more grass waterways in that one and a lot more turning. It was more of I'd say we'll go with a triangle-ish like piece, and there's a little bit more turning and time burning than I wanted to do, at least tomorrow when I'm under the pressure of trying to keep the truck moving. And we're running the stuff. Have I ever told you how much I like this combine? I might not like soybeans, which is a pretty well running standard for me, but when you have a combine that literally just eats them, it's a lot more enjoyable to run them. I mean, even in these not necessarily great conditions I thought I was dealing with, and you actually enjoy harvesting them. So the 9510, if I was up here with that right now, I wouldn't even be halfway as far as I am with this. Granted, smaller head, smaller machine. I can't help it. There's a bunch of grass in these waterways I've pulled into the head just because, the odd angles, and I can't avoid it. But luckily the grass isn't like covered in moisture or isn't dewy or anything, so I'm able to pull it through the combine. But if I had to do that with the 9510, I would be slugging it pretty well non-stop. And there's a picture of, I think it was Chris Farley from Tommy Boy. Somebody made a joke about that, where the face on you have when you run a tough slug through the combine. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like to avoid, especially harvesting soybeans. I mean, you don't really worry about doing it with corn, but 3.5 plus miles an hour on the straightaways, I can run pretty well 4. I don't feel it on the combine at all. I mean, the header height adjustment has been working all right. I think it's not the end of the world that it was giving us issues, but the head is still operating infinitely better than our previous setup, which, I don't know, it wasn't its fault. It was tired. It was worn out. So you guys can start hearing some of the soybeans are starting to bounce off the front window here. For being as tough as everything was, we're still at 12.5% moisture, so we're definitely in the go zone as far as that's concerned. I mean, honestly, up to 13.5, it wouldn't have really slowed me down much. If we would have started seeing 14%, I probably would have said we can wait till tomorrow. And it's just these beans that you're seeing me harvest, this is the first of any of my crops I've harvested this year, and any farmer will tell you that. It's just a good feeling to finally see some of your crops coming off. Most ground I've ran in my history, and we're still growing. Not really bragging about that by any means, and it's just a good feeling. Yield hasn't been outstanding in the soybeans. I wouldn't necessarily say a train wreck. I mean, the problem is with this place, the monitor reading on these waterways, I get a bunch of zeroed out readings because I have the head down trying to pick up these little odd nippets and it burns your yield. This is a farm where I'm not really concerned about with what the monitor's telling me yield-wise. The monitor is here 100%, so I can see what the yield is doing when it comes to putting on our fertilizer and planting our crops next year. See, this will be no-till corn. I got to come through in all these waterways with the Rhino 4155 and clean them up, but I got that plan for basically all this fall, is running around, and I got a bunch of corn stalks I got to grind up, and then this farm I always go through and clean up the buffers, clean up the waterways, just because even though it's not my ground and you're trying to keep the landowners happy, yeah, that's obviously part of it, but I like the ground I run to look nice. I like the ground I run to look pretty, I mean, for lack of a better term. And yeah, I got these buffers here that had weeds coming up in them, but they're narrow enough. I couldn't come through with the single spindle 3-point Rhino cutter. I can't even really straddle them with like the gator and spraying them off without like doing more damage than good to the weeds or the crops that's there. So I just go through and I'll clean them up after harvest, and we'll be good. So it's combining beans after dark, and having a machine that can actually do it is just so stinking cool. I was gonna go up and help Ryan unload that cart, but he's already got it running, and at 13 acres, yeah, we're winding down. That lower strip I did kind of burned me on yield, so I gotta rest a little bit more, but we'll get there. We don't have to worry about going over to Iowa to Dubuque. We're running local because where we typically run them is closed this weekend. And going through this weekend, their other facility location is running, I'm not going to say full hours, but like 10 to 5 on Saturday and like noon to 5 on Sunday. Well, for what we have left to run, especially if I'm getting a semi-loaded for tonight, we should be able to get everything harvested this weekend, get the bean head gone through, cleaned up, put away and forgotten about. We'll do a little bit of work to it, but I can also put that down as we need to do it next summer, because we've been getting into a habit, not a bad habit, into a habit of going through and pulling the combine out and the heads out in August, which is right, maybe it is common for a lot of people. I also know a lot of people that wait until about 2 weeks after we've already started harvesting ourselves, and they haven't even pulled their own machines out yet. But going through and getting everything gone throughout that later part of the summer, because for us, we do have a fair amount of hay ground. It's just the way it is, it's facts. But the way our rotations have been going and the amount of grass hay that we've been having, August is typically a slow month for us when it comes to really doing much of any crops. So like for the grass, for third cut for me or the final cut for me, unless it's an odd year or a goofy year that I cut first or second cut like really late, like late June, late July or mid-July or however it works out. The last couple years we really haven't had a whole lot for hay to make in August. So I don't know, I'm not exactly against that. I just would like to get our efficiencies up, and right now 2 balers is awesome, 2 mowers is awesome. I'd say our biggest limiting factor is our ability to get hay moved, because with the flatbed, I won't put 11 bales on the flatbed when it's hooked up to the pickup, but when we were moving with the 46 and that 3-point mover, I had no problem putting 11 bales on the back of that at all. I felt really comfortable doing that. Well, grain tank says it's full. I just got a little snippet here I'm going to clean up. And we're at 900 bushels, and he wanted 1,000, so we're about done for the night, which I'd say is a good start. Tomorrow's going to be a long day just because the plan is to get, oh, there I am swearing again. I don't like swearing when it comes this time of year. Our intentions are to get done with this piece and then get everything back home. I have a farm back at the home farm. That's the only reason we didn't harvest that is because it was a 2.8 bean, and a little bit of that we harvested off of the home farm was wicked wet. Like, are we gonna get in trouble for trying to haul this wicked wet? But alas, we were good. It blended. So that's why we let it go. I just don't want to risk anybody that harvests soybeans, depending on your situation that you have to store it and move it and everything else. Nobody likes getting stuck with a bunch of high moisture beans that either the dock is just going to be completely outrageous or you get rejected. I've been rejected before and had to ship it another 20 miles back the other way to find some place that would take it. But that was, I'd say, back in the... My grain tank's full and the combine isn't happy about it. And here comes Ryan. Should probably shut the camera off because Ryan doesn't like being on camera. Who'd have thunk it?